Look around, it's me and my crew.
Hi everyone and welcome to Ari Says Stuff. And did you pass? Did you pass? Were you mute? I'm watching. But I'm sure all of us have seen the plethora of Beyonce Renaissance Tour content.
There's only one way, and that is the Renaissance way. Yes,
She ain't no diva. She ain't no diva. Don't let me get back to my ways. My power they'll never take. Look around, it's me and my crew. Tripped in my girl like Coco Canal.
The impact that she's had on her fans is honestly astounding, and I can't help but wonder why. How has she done it again? Everything she touches blows up, but this feels a little bit different. It feels a lot larger and a lot more impactful. Beyonce's Renaissance Tour is so very important for so many reasons, but I want to touch on a few of those today. Let's get into it. So before we get into the Renaissance album, I feel like we should ask ourselves, what was the Renaissance in general? Like, what is the Renaissance? Where does this come from? Well, the Renaissance was divided into three main phases: the early Renaissance, the high Renaissance, and the late Renaissance. Humanism was a central intellectual movement of the Renaissance. It emphasized the study of classical texts from ancient Greece and Rome, focusing on subjects like literature, philosophy, and history. Humanists saw a revival of classical knowledge and a greater understanding of the human potential. There was also a huge emphasis on art and architecture. The Renaissance witnessed a dramatic shift in artistic styles. Artists began to move away from the flat, symbolic, and religious themes of the medieval period. Instead, they embraced realism, perspective, and renewed interest in the human form. There were also many scientific advancements. The Renaissance was a time of increased scientific inquiry and discovery. Scholars like Copernicus and Galileo challenged the geocentric view of the universe, contributing to the development of modern astronomy. The period laid the groundwork for the scientific revolution that followed. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century played a crucial role in the spread of Renaissance ideas. It allowed for the mass production of books, making literature more widely accessible. The Renaissance marked a shift towards secularism, emphasizing human experiences in the early realm rather than focusing solely on religious matters. The shift is evident in both artistic and intellectual expressions of the time. The Renaissance had a profound and lasting impact on Western culture. Its ideas and achievements laid the groundwork for the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, and the subsequent development of the modern Western civilization. I know, that was boring. But basically, if you really just take anything from it, a big part of the Renaissance is like a rebirth. The word Renaissance literally means rebirth. And when this album and eventually tour came, we needed a rebirth more than ever. Beyonce's included so much into the Renaissance album, but one thing she made sure to do was to include Black artists and Black creatives. And even has a song that pays homage to Black women in the music industry that came before her, during her, and after her time. I guess that would still be during her time because it's still her time. But you like the younger generation of girls, if that makes sense. Let me know if this rings a bell. Rosetta Tharpe, Santee Gold, Bessie Smith, Nina Simone, Betty Davis, Solange Knowles, Badu, Lizzo, Kelly Roll, Lauryn Hill, Roberta Flack, Toni, Janet, Tierra Whack, Missy, Diana, Grace Jones, Aretha, Anita, Grace Jones, Helen, Falasa Deadu, Gilly from Philly, Beyonce loves you, boo. Okay, let me stop. But she does also go on to shout out Michelle, Chloe, Halle, Aaliyah, Alicia, Whitney, Rihanna, and Nicki. And I think that this was an awesome gesture on Beyonce's part. A lot of times in the music industry, they try to pit women against each other, especially Black women. And the fact that the biggest artist, if not one of the biggest artists in the world, if not in the Black community, went out of her way to shout out all of these women in her song when she really didn't have to, I think was a really beautiful gesture and something that a lot of us can learn from in every industry. A lot of the women she named really aren't getting the flowers that they truly deserve. And them being shouted out in this song is just a tiny step forward in that way of giving Black women the flowers that they deserve when they do great things, as we always do. Not only did she do this, but she also made an effort to include Black designers in some of her stage wardrobe. For example, for her show on Juneteenth weekend, she only wore outfits that were designed by Black designers. This includes a custom glittering bodysuit in red, white, and gold that was designed by Ethiopian designer Fabian. She also wore a silver corseted bodysuit that resembled armor. It was designed by Balmain's Olivier Rousting. The Parisian house describes her silver-plated bodysuit, which she paired with thigh-high boots as robo couture. She also wore a bright pink sequined gown with a halter neckline and thigh-high slits, which was a bespoke design created by her own label, Ivy Park. Her dancers also matched in bodysuits and crop tops in the same highly saturated shade of pink. One of the most memorable looks from that night was a fitted red beaded Ferragamo gown, which had a sculpted waist, a square neckline, and a thigh-high slit on the left leg. Maximilian Davis is responsible for the look. He's made this fiery shade of red his signature to represent his roots of Trinidad and Tobago. Beyonce made it very clear that this album is not just for the girls, but for the girls. That was embarrassing. Yeah. She's included so many Black queer icons in this album. First one being Moy Renee. Moy Renee was a drag performer in the underground New York gay club scene in the 90s. Moy Renee's voice can be heard on the song Pure Honey on Beyonce's Renaissance album.
Miss Honey, 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 Miss Honey.
Another queer icon on the album would be Big Freedia. Big Freedia is known for popularizing the hip-hop bounce sound out of New Orleans. Big Freedia had a song in 2014 called Explode, which Beyonce borrowed for her song Break My Soul.
I'm about to explode, take off this load. I release my belt and make it go. I'm about to explode, take off this load. Make it go.
Big Freedia was also on Beyonce's song Formation. Next up is Kevin Aviance. Kevin Aviance, a performer, artist, and musician, has been a staple of the New York's downtown club scene since the 90s. He can also be heard on the song Pure Honey. Kevin Aviance has collaborated with Whitney Houston, Cher, Mary J. Blige, and Janet Jackson in the past. Next would be T.S. Madison. T.S. Madison is a transgender comedian, actress, and advocate. She first went viral on Vine and her successful YouTube channel. T.S. Madison's voice can be heard on the song Cozy from Beyonce's Renaissance album.
I'm dark brown, dark skin, light skin, beige, fluorescent beige, bitch. I'm black.
There's so many queer icons that were on the album or helped inspire the album, but the last one that I want to give recognition to is Beyonce's Uncle Johnny. Beyonce referred to her Uncle Johnny as her godmother and the first person to expose me to a lot of the music and culture that serve as an inspiration for this album. Beyonce stated, "Thank you to all of the pioneers who originate culture, to all of the fallen angels whose contributions have gone unrecognized for far too long. This is a celebration for you."
I want to dedicate this award to my Uncle Johnny, the most fabulous gay man I've ever known and I ever knew, who helped raise me and my sister. He lived his truth, and he was brave and unapologetic during a time when this country wasn't as accepting. And witnessing his battle with HIV was one of the most painful experiences I've ever lived. I'm hopeful that his struggle served to open pathways for other young people to live more freely.
Beyonce's mother, Miss Tina, shared that Uncle Johnny helped her raise Beyonce and Solange, and that the girls worshipped him. Uncle Johnny even made Beyonce's prom dress. Beyonce honors him with one of the greatest lines on the album.
Uncle Johnny made my dress, that cheap spandex, she looks a mess.
I just wanted to take that time to highlight a few of the queer icons that Beyonce pulled inspiration from on the album. Now I do want to go a little bit further into the actual history of the Black ballroom scene. The Black ballroom scene is so robust and has inspired so much pop culture to this day. I think if we get a better understanding of where they came from and where they are now, it will really drive home why it was so important for their culture to be highlighted on such a grand level. Ballroom culture originated in Harlem, New York in the 1960s and 70s. Black and Latinx LGBTQ+ individuals, particularly transgender women and gender nonconforming individuals, face discrimination and marginalization in mainstream society. As a response, they created their own subculture where they could express themselves freely. This subculture evolved from drag pageantry, which initially favored white contestants, into diverse competitions including Vogue battles. The roots of these elements can be tracked back to the late 1800s when Harlem's Hamilton Lodge No. 710 hosted drag balls featuring female impersonators. During the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, the drag ball scene flourished, fueled by the growing freedom and expression of Black culture. Despite being interracial, drag balls face racial bias and judging persisting into the mid-20th century. In 1967, Miss All-America Camp Beauty pageant, won by a white contestant, sparked controversy. Black contestant Crystal LaBeija accused the judges of discrimination.
You know she didn't deserve it. All of them, the judges knew it too. Because she was terrible. And her explanation for why she wanted the money, to put it in the bank. She said, Crystal, darling, don't go. Because you're not going to get it. And that's why all the true beauties didn't come.
It's in bad taste and you're showing your color and stuff.
I am doing it bad, but I have a right to show my color, darling.
In the early 1970s, Harlem drag queen Lottie LaBeija persuaded Crystal to organize her own ball, leading to the birth of House of LaBeija, the first ever ballroom house. Houses are alternative families or social groups. Each house is led by a house mother or house father and includes members who often identify as children of the house. Ballroom houses functioned as alternative families and offered security for Black and Latinx queer, gay, and trans individuals. The houses provided support, mentorship, and a sense of belonging.
How their families, kids with broken homes or no home at all.
My name is Angie Extravaganza, and I am the mother of the House of Extravaganza.
I'm Willie Ninja, the mother of the House of Ninja.
The house ball scene differentiated from drag balls in 1973, welcoming gay men and male-presenting individuals. Balls are events where members of different houses compete in various categories, showcasing their talents and creativity. These categories include voguing, runway, face, realness, and more. Balls became a platform for self-expression, allowing participants to challenge societal norms and celebrate their identities. And from this came the art of voguing. Voguing, an improvisational dance inspired by fashion magazine poses, originated within the ballroom scene. It evolved from the old way of pop, dip, and spin in the 1970s and 80s to new way and Vogue femme in the early 1990s. Voguing, beyond a dance style, became a form of resistance and storytelling for marginalized communities. Voguing gained mainstream exposure through Madonna's Vogue, which featured voguers such as Jose Gutierrez Extravaganza and Luis Camacho Extravaganza in the video. However, Madonna was accused of culturally appropriating a culture that she had no claim to and turning a rich history of Vogue into a fad. It was also popularized in the documentary Paris is Burning in 1990 and 1991. The ballroom culture continues to influence mainstream media through shows like RuPaul's Drag Race, America's Best Dance Crew, and Pose. Queer ballroom scene remains an essential part of the LGBTQ plus community. Beyonce showcasing this culture in her album and on her tour especially is so important. Putting their voices on such a huge stage is not something to take lightly. And by putting it on her album and bringing it on tour, it puts the history in front of a much larger audience. Some who may not have known the history behind this culture, and some who fully did know the history, who've just felt seen and could relate. I would say it even creates a sense of pride and joy to see a piece of you, a part of your community, being celebrated on such a huge stage by so many people, by such a large artist. Not only is it a form of entertainment, but it also helps bring awareness to the community and any issues they still may be dealing with or any causes that they're passionate about. Them being amplified and put in front of so many faces and so many eyes is an amazing step in bringing awareness to this community. Another reason why this tour was so important is because after COVID, I think a lot of people really needed an outlet. According to the World Health Organization, the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, global prevalence of anxiety and depression increased by a massive 25%. One major explanation for this is the social isolation caused by the pandemic. A lot of people were unable to work and engage in community activities. Another link for this depression and anxiety would be the fear of being infected, loved ones being infected, or even passing away due to the virus, financial worries, and overall loneliness. And that's not even to mention the disproportionate amount of Black people that were affected by the virus.
Look at this chart. You can see African Americans represent 41% of COVID-19 deaths. The next closest race, Caucasian at 28%.
I think that the Renaissance tour really came at a perfect time. People had a little bit of time to recoup financially and mentally a little bit, come back together with a lot of their loved ones, and slowly start to get back into really having a social life similar to pre-pandemic. A lot of Beyonce's music on the Renaissance album was very aspirational and empowering, and I think after going through such an unprecedented time, a lot of people really needed some empowering in their lives. The Renaissance tour also fostered a sense of connection. I mean, when you're looking out and everybody is wearing the same colors as you, they're just as excited as you, y'all have a common interest with that being Beyonce and the album, it's such a beautiful way to come together with a bunch of strangers and build connection. I'm sure there were a lot of friendships that were forged at the Renaissance tour. Also, with the album being so catered to the Black queer community, who typically are hit harder in general with mental health crises, seeing that representation on the tour after going through this long pandemic sure was a fresh of breath air. And music does have a way of improving our self-esteem, our self-worth, our mental well-being overall, especially when it has a positive message and an empowering message behind it. And also, how often do you really get to scream, cry, and just let everything all out? Very rarely. Especially in a space where there's little to no judgment because everybody else around you looks just like you, whether it is your skin or the colors you're wearing, or they have a similar background. There's some type of relatability there, and it's a judgment-free zone. Everybody around you is screaming and having the time of their lives and crying. This was very much needed for a lot of people. Her music on this album really fosters a sense of hope and excitement for the future, if we're being honest. Music is a form of escapism, and this is the Renaissance after all. During difficult times, a lot of people will use music to transport them to a different place. Mentally, that is. It can be sort of comforting emotionally when you're going through things or have had a troubling life, a troubling past, maybe just went through a pandemic, to be able to have an outlet to let out those emotions and to just kind of escape your reality for a little bit.
So somehow I forgot to film an outro for the video, but I do just want to thank you guys for watching the video and making it to the end. And I would love to hear your opinions on this. Do you feel like the album and the tour was impactful? Do you not? Why? Leave it in the comment section down below. And if you could like and subscribe, that would also be very helpful. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Miss Honey. Miss Honey.